Diddy's ex, Cassie Ventura, who is 9 months pregnant, was on the stand for the second day in a row. The jury was shown photos of past injuries. She also testified the freak-offs left her with sores, frequent UTIs, and stomach problems.
She didn't post about it, she didn't rant, she didn't even speak. For years, Cassie was just there, standing next to power, smiling quietly, fading into the background. No drama, no interview, just silence. Then suddenly that silence shattered.
Combs violently assaulting her. The singer writing on Instagram, "Domestic violence is the issue. It broke me down to someone I never thought I could become. With a lot of hard work, I am better today, but I will always be recovering from my past." The surveillance footage, which was obtained by CNN and published on Friday, shows Combs chasing Ventura in the hallway of a
Headlines hit, accusations dropped. Everyone started talking, but in all the chaos, most people still missed the real story. Not the part that made the news, not the courtroom headlines. Something darker, something too uncomfortable for most people to even look at, even though it was right in front of them. And somehow, almost no one noticed. And here's the thing, once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere, in the photos, in the interviews, in the way everything felt just a little too controlled. And once you do, you'll start wondering how nobody said anything sooner.
If stories like this matter to you, if you believe silence doesn't mean safety, tap like so this doesn't get buried. And subscribe, because what you're about to hear, it's not just the truth, it's the part they never wanted you to notice.
From the outside, it looked perfect. Cassie was living the dream. Private jets, fashion deals, VIP everything. She was seen with A-listers, dressed by top designers, always present, always polished, always quiet, always standing next to a man who built an empire and made sure everyone knew it. But something about her presence never felt complete. The music faded, the interviews stopped. She wasn't speaking, she wasn't releasing, she wasn't growing, just existing, always dressed like a star, but somehow disappearing at the same time.
Just 2 days after Cassie Ventura was savagely assaulted by her then-boyfriend Sean P. Diddy Combs, the actress and singer put on a brave face and turned out for the world premiere for her new film, The Perfect Match.
There's people everywhere.
Everywhere. Hip Hollywood was on hand for the March 7th premiere, also attended by Diddy's ex-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez, and captured this footage of she and Combs smiling for the cameras on the red carpet. We also spoke to Cassie about her role in shooting intimate scenes.
People noticed the silence, but only enough to turn it into a joke. Is she still around? Why doesn't she drop music? It never went deeper than that. No one looked past the surface. No one really wanted to, because power hides things. It wraps itself in luxury and makes silence look like elegance. And when someone's standing next to that much money, that much fame, people assume they're fine. They assume it's a choice. But some choices don't feel like choices when they're made behind closed doors. Everything around her was too perfect, too planned. The kind of clean that doesn't come without control. You could feel it in the way she posed, in the space she took up, small, careful, calculated. Something about it was always off, but what nobody realized then was how tightly that image was being held together, and just how far the person behind it was willing to go to keep it that way. Cassie didn't disappear. She was managed, quietly, completely, and without resistance. Everything around her was structured. Her image, her movement, her silence. There were rules. Some spoken, most not. And once those rules were in place, they didn't shift. They narrowed. Where she went, what she wore, who she was seen with, the way she stood in photos, the way she stayed out of interviews. Nothing was left to chance. And from the outside, it all looked normal, organized, maybe even professional, but look closer, and the pattern gets clearer. He wasn't just her partner. He was her manager, her label, her boyfriend, her boss, her image handler. Every version of her passed through him first. Every decision filtered through control disguised as love, as mentorship, as support. People called it loyalty, or privacy, or class. But it wasn't any of that. It was shrinkage. Quiet, measured, intentional. Because protection doesn't silence you, and real support doesn't erase your presence. There were no meltdowns, no messy exits, just a slow disappearance packaged as stability. But it wasn't stability. It was a system, and it left clues. Small ones, easy to miss. All the signs were there. Quiet, small, carefully disguised. But she wasn't just being managed. She was trying to send a message. And once you know how to read it, you'll realize she'd been speaking the whole time. Cassie never screamed, never broke down. But she did try to speak, just not in the way anyone expected. And the wildest part? She was doing it in plain sight. The body language, the silence. The way she stood just behind him instead of beside him. The way she smiled in public but never spoke. The way she stopped creating, stopped showing up as herself. There were no headlines, no scandals, no outbursts, just a slow fade. The kind that feels harmless when it's happening, but chilling when you realize it wasn't accidental. She wasn't releasing music, she wasn't doing interviews. Years passed, and not a word. That's not just rebranding, that's erasure.
Frequent UTIs and stomach problems. This afternoon, jurors watched a series of graphic images from freak-off sex parties involving Diddy and Cassie.
According to Cassie, she was embarrassed by it. She even talked about, what would I tell my mom if something like this got out? There was a text message shared from 2017 where she said nothing good comes out of freak-offs. And then she says, you treat me like you're Ike Turner. And that was a nod to the abuse that she says she suffered.
I survived what I've been through.
For the third day in a row, jurors watched hotel surveillance of Diddy abusing Cassie. The full, unedited 15-minute version was entered as evidence and shows moments we hadn't seen before. Cassie barefoot in a dark hoodie, waiting for the elevator and using the hotel phone. And this security director, responding to the attack, took these pictures of the aftermath: broken vases and marks on the wall. And this awkward moment with Diddy and Cassie from the 2018 Met Gala is going viral.
Is there anything that you may want to confess tonight before you go in?
I keep everything right here.
There you go.
Or right here.
There you go.
And it wasn't just the silence, it was how polished everything felt, how tightly controlled every public moment became. Every red carpet, every photo, every pie idea. You could feel the tension if you watched long enough. People assumed she was just quiet, reserved, low-key. But silence can be a symptom. And distance doesn't always mean peace. Here's what the signs really were, plain and simple. She stopped releasing music. She never did interviews. She always stood slightly behind him. Her image was too polished, too quiet, and her silence lasted for years, but no one questioned it.
Combs violently assaulting her. The singer writing on Instagram, domestic violence is the issue. It broke me down.
And the craziest part? That wasn't even the loudest sign. The next one was right there, bigger, bolder, practically flashing, and somehow it still went unnoticed until now. Her silence wasn't just survival, it was protection. Not for her, for him, for his empire, for everything he built and everyone who fed off it. The less she said, the louder his image became. The mogul, the boss, the untouchable icon, the man with a flawless track record, a billion-dollar brand, and a spotless public legacy.
If you've made it this far, you're not just scrolling. You're the kind of viewer this channel was built for. Tap subscribe, and let's keep digging into the real stuff.
Because without her speaking, there was nothing to challenge the narrative. No lawsuits, no questions, no stories leaking out at the wrong time. He stayed clean, untouched, unbothered, and the world kept celebrating him. Awards, partnerships, endorsements, because silence is good for business when you're the one in control of it. And it wasn't just him who benefited. His friends, his collaborators, the companies attached to his name. They all got to keep winning because Cassie didn't say a word. As long as she stayed quiet, so did the people around him. The silence wasn't random. It was valuable, it was currency, and it bought him everything. Until it didn't. Because once a silence like that breaks, it doesn't just crack the surface. It tears through everything it was holding together. The real sign was that Cassie's silence helped him stay powerful, respected, and untouchable. And no one asked why that silence lasted so long. But here's what nobody expected. She wasn't the only one who stayed silent. Not even close. And some of the people who stayed quiet, they were the ones closest to him. And what's worse than one person staying quiet? A room full of people who saw everything and chose silence anyway. There were others, people in the room, people in the house, people at the table. They watched her dim, watched her disappear. They saw the shifts, the silence, the change in energy. And whether they ever said it out loud or not, deep down, they knew something wasn't right. People like Andre Harrell, the legendary executive who helped shape Diddy's rise. People like Lorianne Gibson, who was part of the Bad Boy family and knew the behind-the-scenes machine. Harve Pierre, French Montana, Rick Ross, Mary J. Blige, Usher. They stood beside him on red carpets, in music videos, at parties. Some even called him family. And yet, silence. Then there were the women who shared similar circles. Jennifer Lopez, who dated Diddy during the early years. Kim Porter, whose death raised quiet questions long before the lawsuits. Dawn Richard, who worked closely with both of them in Danity Kane. If anyone noticed something was off, they never said. And behind the scenes, managers, label executives, stylists, handlers, these weren't strangers. These were insiders. People with direct access. Some of whom may have seen the emotional distance, the creative block, the control. Some brushed it off. Some told themselves it wasn't their place. Some stayed close to the power because it felt safer, smarter, or simply more profitable. Because speaking up, that could cost everything. So instead, they helped shape the silence. They helped sell it. They helped protect the image. They stood beside him at events. smiled in interviews, defended him in private, and even now, some of them are still quiet, backing away slowly, hoping no one notices how close they used to be. But the silence doesn't sound the same anymore, because once the truth starts leaking out, you don't just question the person at the top. You start questioning everyone who stood beside him. And what finally broke that silence? It didn't come with a headline. It started with something smaller, something no one expected. And once it started, it couldn't be stopped. Section 6, when the silence finally broke. It didn't start with a documentary. It didn't start with a press tour. It started with a single lawsuit. No interviews, no threats, just a quiet court filing. And in that filing, everything exploded.
November. In the since settled suit, she also recounts an instance in March 2016 where Combs became, quote, extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye.
Allegations of control, of isolation, of surveillance, of fear. Years of silence cracked open in a few short paragraphs. And what people saw in that document wasn't random. It was precise, chilling, and it had names, timelines, and patterns.
2016, security video obtained by CNN appears to show Combs assaulting Cassie in the hallway of the Intercontinental Hotel. The video captures multiple angles and shows Combs running down the hallway in a white towel before hitting, kicking, and dragging her out of the frame.
Headlines came fast. The reactions were immediate. Some people were shocked. Others weren't. And the ones who had stayed quiet the longest, suddenly they had nothing to say. The image that had once looked untouchable started falling apart. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Brand deals were pulled, collaborations were paused, friends quietly unfollowed. Apologies appeared in carefully worded PR statements.
He is truly sorry.
I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness.
For the first time, the silence was over, and as it broke, people finally started asking the question they should have asked years ago. How long had this been going on? But even with all the headlines, most people still missed the most disturbing part of all. Not what was said, but what was hidden in plain sight. And here's what no one expected. Someone close to him finally spoke. Not loud, not directly, but just enough to break the wall. And when they did, everything started unraveling. People thought the story started when the lawsuit dropped, but that was just the paperwork. The real story had been playing out for years, in plain sight. It was in the red carpets where Cassie stood half a step behind, in the interviews she didn't give, in the albums she never released, in the way she smiled without speaking, in how often she was present, but never centered. Everyone saw the photos, they watched the videos, they reposted the moments, but they were watching the image, not the person. Because here's the part nobody talks about. Silence doesn't always look like suffering. Sometimes it looks like luxury, sometimes it looks like elegance, sometimes it's hidden under perfect lighting, perfect angles, and designer gowns. People missed it because they didn't know what they were looking at. They thought it was fashion. They thought it was branding. They thought it was Cassie choosing to be quiet. But now, when you look back at those moments, really look, you start seeing what was always there. The stiffness, the stillness, the space she never fully took up. Everyone missed that Cassie's silence wasn't peace. It was control, and it was hiding in plain sight the entire time. And once you see that, you can't help but wonder what else the silence was covering. Because the truth Cassie finally told, that was just the beginning. When Cassie finally spoke, it wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge, it was clarity. Clean, measured, and documented. And somehow, that made it even more chilling. She didn't ask for fame, she didn't ask for pity, she asked for accountability. And once the silence broke, everything shifted, because this wasn't just a story about one man. It was about how long power can cover the truth, how luxury can bury pain, and how someone can disappear right in front of the world while everyone stays focused on the surface. The truth Cassie told didn't just expose a person, it exposed a system. And suddenly people were asking harder questions, not just about Diddy, but about who gets protected, who gets erased, and who gets forced into silence just to survive. This wasn't just Cassie's story, it was a reminder that silence doesn't always mean safety, that sometimes the quietest people are carrying the loudest truths, and that when someone finally breaks, it's not the beginning of the story, it's the part no one ever wanted you to see. Because the silence Cassie lived in, it's still happening, just to different women in different rooms. If this story hit you, if it made you think differently, drop a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe because there's more truth beneath the surface, and we're not done uncovering it.